Okay, let's talk about something we've all been through. You get a new idea, a new goal, you're fired up, you buy the new gear, you tell your friends, and then a week later, poof, all that energy is gone. We're going to break down why that happens.
You know that feeling, right? It's so frustrating. You think, this is it, this is the time it sticks. And then, like clockwork, the motivation just vanishes. Well, it turns out the reason has way less to do with your willpower and a whole lot more to do with how your brain is wired.
And this is the part that really stings, isn't it? The shame. That little voice in your head that says, see, you always do this. You can never stick with anything. But what if I told you that this isn't some personal failure? It's actually a predictable psychological pattern, one that has a name and, most importantly, a way to beat it.
We all know this dance. First, you've got the honeymoon phase. Everything is exciting, new, you're making progress, and you're flying high on that initial burst of energy. But then comes the crash, right into what we'll call the boring, unsexy middle. And that's where things get tough.
So, what is actually going on under the hood here? To really understand how to break this cycle, we have to start with the diagnosis. And the main reason we get stuck is a psychological phenomenon known as false hope syndrome.
So, a couple of psychologists, Polivy and Herman, they're the ones who coined this term. And what they found is that we keep falling into the same trap because we start with these wildly unrealistic expectations. We think the change is going to be fast, it's going to be easy, and the rewards will be huge and immediate. We're basically setting ourselves up to fail before we even begin.
And here's why this cycle is so sneaky. You start, and you see that little bit of initial progress in step 2. And that feeling is amazing. It's so reinforcing. It makes you think, see, I can do this. So when you eventually fail, you don't blame the unrealistic goal. No, you blame something else and tell yourself, next time will be different. And boom, you're right back at the start of the loop.
Man, this quote from Susan David just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? Our fantasy of how easy and quick this change should be is exactly what sets us up for failure. When reality doesn't match the fantasy, we end up resenting the whole process.
And what's fueling all this? Well, it's a sneaky little glitch in our thinking called the planning fallacy. It's like our brain has this built-in optimism filter that's permanently stuck on high. Even if we failed at this exact same goal 5 times before, this bias makes us ignore all that past evidence and set these crazy, impossible deadlines for ourselves.
Okay, so we've set the trap for ourselves with false hope and bad planning. Now let's talk about where that trap actually springs, the messy middle. This, right here, is where motivation goes to die. Check out what's happening inside your nervous system. Those first few days, you're running on what's called novelty dopamine. It's a powerful chemical rush, and it feels great. But around day 6 or 7, that novelty just wears off. Suddenly, your brain isn't feeling excitement anymore, it's feeling pressure. And it sees that pressure as a threat, so your whole system just slams on the emergency brakes.
And here's the kicker about dopamine. The science shows us it is fantastic at getting us excited about a future reward. It's all about the anticipation, the potential prize. But it's not very sensitive to the actual boring, difficult work you have to do to get there. That's why the idea of running a marathon is so much more exciting than actually waking up for a run on a cold, rainy Tuesday morning.
And this isn't just a feeling, it's a documented phenomenon. In one study, they had people proofread a text. And sure enough, people were fastest at the beginning and then again at the very end. But right in the middle, whoosh, performance took a nosedive. This U-shaped curve shows up everywhere. Getting stuck in the middle is just a universal part of the process.
So listen, the work doesn't actually get harder in the middle. What changes is how we see our progress. At the start, we're looking back at how far we've come from 0. Near the end, we're pulled forward by that finish line. But in the middle, you're in this psychological no man's land, where the start feels like a distant memory and the finish line feels like it's a million miles away.
Okay, so we've got the diagnosis. We know about false hope syndrome and the messy middle. So what's the cure? Well, it's not about trying harder or just having more willpower. It's about being smarter than your own brain and using strategies that actually work with your psychology, not against it.
Now this sounds really fancy, but it is dead simple. It's just creating an if-then plan. So instead of a vague goal like I'll meditate more, you get super specific. If it is 7 a.m., then I will meditate for 5 minutes. This little trick works because it takes the decision-making out of the moment. You're not relying on motivation. You're just following a script. You're putting your habit on autopilot. And if you're wondering, does this little trick actually work? Oh yeah, it works. There was this landmark study back in '97 that tested this exact thing. They asked students to write a report over the Christmas holidays, a time when, motivation is basically zero.
Now get ready for this. Of the students who just had the goal to finish their report, only 39% did it on time. But for the students who created a specific if-then plan, an incredible 83% got it done. That is a massive difference, all from one tiny little planning sentence.
Okay, next strategy, you have to fight your brain's threat response by making the new habit feel totally safe. That means you need to start so small it feels almost stupid, like 1 push-up, or reading 1 page of a book. James Clear calls this the 2-minute rule. The point isn't to transform your life overnight. The point is to make the action so tiny and non-threatening that your nervous system doesn't pull that emergency brake. Consistency will always beat intensity. So, to fight that false hope syndrome we talked about, you have to ground your goals in reality. And the SMART framework is perfect for this. It forces you to get specific, to make it measurable, and most importantly, attainable. This is how you build a real roadmap, not just a hopeful fantasy.
Another great trick is to piggyback your new habit onto a routine you already have. This is called habit stacking. So, after I brush my teeth, I will do 1 push-up. And also, give yourself some grace with the 2-day rule. Look, you're human, you're gonna miss a day. The key is to just never miss 2 in a row. That 2nd day is when the habit really starts to unravel.
All right, this last one, this might be the biggest game changer of them all. Stop focusing on the outcome and start focusing on the identity. Every time you lace up your shoes and go for a 1-minute run, you are casting a vote for being a runner. Your actions start to reflect who you are, and believe me, that is a much more powerful motivator than chasing some distant finish line.
So let's end with this. You are not broken. You are not lazy or undisciplined. You are a human being who is basically allergic to the messy, boring middle. But that discomfort you feel, that's not a stop sign. That's the feeling of change actually happening. The middle is where the real work gets done.
So what if we just reframed the whole goal? Instead of aiming for this perfect, unbroken streak, what if the only goal was to show up and not quit when it gets boring, when you're in the middle? Because understanding the science of why you quit, well, that's the first real step to finally making it all the way through.